Part 5. Chapter 15. Run. "Get to Harith Prime," is the last thing Will hears before a loud screeching comes from Benny's station. That entire section of the bridge is smoking. Sparks and flame are everywhere. "Benny!" Will is already out of his seat and grabbing the unconscious hacker, dragging him clear of the destroyed station. The ship lurches again and the sound of metal tearing fills the bridge. Zephyr rushes over and pushes Will away. "Fly!" she yells at him over the noise. Will lurches up and staggers back to his station. "Gabe, report." He's fighting the controls now, trying to avoid fire from the new warships. The overhead speakers crackle and hiss before Gabe's voice comes through. "Significant damage to the central corridor. I am afraid it looks like the bridge is cut off from the rest of the vessel. In addition, the port engine pod has suffered extensive damage. It is only about 10% functional. FTL is impossible. The weapons array is damaged, as is the repulsor system for landing and atmospheric flight. Also, that stabilizer is no longer an issue." Will perks up. "It's fixed?" "It is gone." "Drin!" Will is fighting to keep the ship moving in the general direction of Harith Prime, but the damage has made maneuvering difficult. Even at top speed, outrunning a Peacekeeper carrier is unlikely. At only 3/4 of their capacity, it's impossible. Normally, it would still be a fair fight as the much smaller warship is far more agile and can easily outmaneuver the larger ship. But that advantage is almost entirely gone now. "Is there anything you can do, Gabe?" Over the speakers, the few that remain active, the bot replies. "I am afraid not, Captain. I will continue to look for options." Will looks over to Zephyr and the prone Benny. "How's he doing?" She looks up. "He's not dead, so there's that. He'll need a doctor or an autodoc soon. Looks like his arm and leg are broken, and there's a gash on his head. His breathing is strong, so that's good." Will turns back to his controls. The Peacekeepers are currently being distracted by the remaining Harith Navy, but the remains of that force are not much of a match for them. "Maxim, check the main corridor. See if you can get through or seal off the damage. Maybe we can get Benny to the med bay. Not much more you can do at tactical now anyway." The big man gets up. "On it." Will can hear him calling Gabe on his wrist comm as he hurries out the bridge. "Incoming hail," the computer announces. "From whom?" "Commander Janus. Senior Peacekeeper Commander, Belarus Sector. His description." Will and Zephyr exchange looks. "Put him on." The screen, still riddled with static, changes from a view of the stars to what Will can only describe as an eel in a Peacekeeper uniform. "Janus, good to see you again," Will says. He taps a few controls on his console. On the screen, the Peacekeeper sneers, taking in the wreck that is the bridge of the Ghost.
"You've looked better, Wil Calder. Why not shut your engines down and surrender? Maybe you don't even have to die. I'm sure we can find a rock to hide you under, after you admit publicly the doctoring that transmission, of course."
Zephyr steps into the camera's range.
"Never, Janus. You and every corrupt Peacekeeper will burn for this."
Janus's smile gets wider.
Well, well, I'd wondered what happened to you and Maxim. I'd heard that the Partherians lost you, but would never have guessed you'd end up with this human. Taking on a crew finally, Will. Better for me. All my loose ends in one convenient wrapper. As I said, surrender now. You're going to die anyway, but it doesn't have to be painful or drawn out. I understand asphyxiating from a hull breach is rather unpleasant."
"Megan, Xersix, things are getting very exciting and dangerous around here. We're aboard the Quillant cruiser now, but I don't know if we're any safer. 4 more Peacekeeper carriers have arrived, and we've just received what can only be described as a final nail in the Peacekeeper's coffin. The commander of these 4 new vessels seemed to know the captain of the Ghost, who we now know is being named Wil Calder. The conversation between the two was quite telling, and whether intentional or not, was broadcast entirely over an open channel." She looks off screen and blanches a bit, but nods.
I've just been informed that the commander of the Quillant forces has been in conference with the Harith and their rebels, as well as the Zangar. I'm not told what's next, but I suspect that, whatever it is, it'll be big.
Wil opens his mouth to tell Janus exactly what he can do with his ultimatum when Zephyr points to the tactical display near Maxim Station.
Look!
Before Wil can do anything, he sees the bridge around Janus erupt into chaos and shake slightly. Wil hits a control on his console, ending the call with Janus and switching to a tactical view. On screen, he sees nearly 36 ships converging on the Peacekeeper Task Force. The Quillant, the Harith rebels, and the Zangar must have had a little powwow while the Peacekeepers were chasing the Ghost. Enemy of my enemy. The newly formed anti-Peacekeeper fleet is buzzing around the 4 carriers, doing a fair bit of damage, but overall losing more than they're winning.
Wil, those ships aren't going to last long. Those carriers aren't pulling their punches,
Zephyr reports back at her station. Maxim re-enters the bridge. What's going on? Oh, the usual. Lots of ships, all fighting each other. Janus is a dick. And he knows you and Zephyr are here. The usual. Where's Benny? Wil turns his chair to face Maxim, seeing only now that he's in his Peacekeeper power armor. Gabe and I were able to repair the damage to the main corridor. Enough to repressurize it temporarily and get Benny to the med bay. The auto doc is working on him. What's our status? We're being chased by 4 Peacekeeper carriers, who are being attacked by an alliance of all the parties, who were, until recently, trying to kill each other. Janus is aboard the lead ship. Maxim growls and stomps over to the tactical station. Wil turns in his chair, watching him. Most of our weapons systems are offline, Maxim says, but we still have 3 XPX 1900s. The ship shakes as a hit strikes the aft shields, or what is left of them. The forward missile magazine is damaged, Maxim reports. Our last XPX 1900 is in the port launcher, though.
Wil, those carriers aren't slowing, Zephyr interrupts. The fleet is doing their best, but they're already down to half their starting strength.
Wil brings the ship around hard, metal groaning from the strain as the inertial compensators struggle. Maxim, fire on the nearest carrier. Without a word, Maxim hits the command on his console. Throughout the ship, the sound of the launcher expelling its lethal load reverberates. On the fizzing, damaged main screen, a lone missile streaks out of the Ghost, aiming straight at one of the oncoming carriers. One missile among hundreds being fired by all sides isn't easy to spot, and is even harder to shoot down. The XPX 1900 hits the Peacekeeper carrier head-on, burrowing right through the hole before it explodes, triggering hundreds of secondary explosions, all down the length of the massive spaceship. The remaining 3 carriers try to move away from the stricken vessel, still fighting off the remnants of the quickly formed fleet. With a last look, Wil brings the Ghost back around on its course to Harith Prime, just as Gabe walks into the bridge.
There's not much I can do in engineering at this point. I am sorry, Captain.
The big engineering bot looks at Benny's station.
Where is Benny?
Without looking, Maxim answers, still in med bay. Without another word, Gabe turns and exits the bridge. Incoming, Maxim shouts. The main display switches to a view aft, showing a wave of incoming missiles. We can't absorb that many hits, the big man warns. We don't have the maneuverability to dodge them, Wil reports, slamming his hands against his console.
Look,
Zephyr shouts, drawing their attention back to the static-filled display. Several ships are speeding towards the Ghost, or rather, the space directly behind the Ghost. They intercept the wave of missiles, each ship being engulfed in flames. For a moment, the crew of the Ghost just watch, dumbstruck.
All those people,
Zephyr says faintly. They're buying us time. Wil grabs his console and flight controls. Maxim, get another XPX ready. The ship banks hard again, groaning with the effort. Hang in there, Wil whispers. We need to shake these carriers enough to get a lead. Maxim, when I say the word, fire the missile between the 2 nearest ships, then detonate. Maxim nods. The Ghost has swung a full 180 degrees and is flying toward the Peacekeeper force. which their now allies are still attempting to destroy. The one remaining disruptor on the starboard engine pod lances out at the oncoming ships. Fire! The Ghost banks just as the deadly missile launches, shaking with each hit the diminishing shields take. Consoles all over the ship are bursting into flames, showering everyone in sparks. Hang on, Wil shouts as the ship shakes violently, still taking hits from all sides. The already damaged port engine pod shears off, taking a large portion of the wing with it. The sound of tearing metal fills the ship. Then the main screen goes dark, followed almost immediately by the rest of the bridge. Allies to the rescue. The last XPX 1900 missile they had has been fired, damaging the two nearest peacekeepers but not destroying them. A second later, the lights come back on. The primary display comes back online, still mostly static. The Ghost is limping along, diving deeper into the Harith system, still heading for Harith Prime.
Wil, they'll be back in weapons range in a few more fractions of a talk,
Zephyr reports. All tactical systems are offline, Maxim adds from his station. Wil sighs. And we're down to about 50% thrust on the sublight engines. I've got the throttle at the stops, but we're just not moving. I'm sorry, guys. The hatch to the bridge opens and Gabe re-enters.
Benny is stable, he reports.
Wil turns to look at the bot. Not sure if that's better or worse for him. He turns back to face the main display. Guessing there's nothing else you can do in engineering.
The big engineering bot shakes his head. I am afraid not, Captain. The damage is quite extensive. I've patched the main reactor as much as I can without risking it going critical. However, it is likely it will still do exactly that, and soon.
It's fine, Gabe. We wouldn't have made it this far without you. Thanks, Wil says wearily. You might as well go keep an eye on Benny, since the rest of us can't easily get back there right now, I'm guessing.
That is correct. The temporary repairs Maxim and I effected earlier have failed, and once again the connecting walkway is exposed to vacuum.
Zephyr looks down at her station, then back at Wil and adjusts the main viewer.
Wil, look at the remnants of the anti-peacekeeper fleet. They're breaking away from the carriers.
Can't blame them. This looks like a lost cause.
There are only 10 ships left, out of the nearly 40 that had first rallied to attack the peacekeepers. All of them seem to have sustained at least some damage. A few will likely be destined for the scrapyard, assuming they survive even that long.
The 3 remaining peacekeeper carriers are still giving chase. 2 of them are damaged, but not enough to give up their pursuit. The third, having taken a rear guard position, is entirely untouched. The Ghost, on the other hand, is not in great shape. One engine is completely gone. Apart from the sublight drive functioning at only half power, there are also several breaches in the hull, some patched, some not.
No, Zephyr says, pointing at the screen. They're coming this way.
No sooner had she spoken than the ships in the display pass over and under the aft camera, and several loud clunks can be heard from the top and bottom of the ship. The whole ship shakes slightly. This is not the jarring impacts of weapons fire, but something else.
They're locking onto us with grapplers.
Wil looks at his console and sees their speed increasing, climbing back up to full sublight. He frowns. I can't believe it. They're towing us to Harith Prime. What are they doing? Maxim looks at his tactical display. Following. The third ship, the least damaged, is moving into the lead and accelerating rapidly. We're not in the clear yet. We're still at least a talk from Harith Prime, and that ship will overtake us in half that time.
We're being hailed,
Zephyr announces. Please tell me it's not the peacekeepers, Wil says, looking over at her. There's nothing to focus on now that even the flight of the Ghost is out of their hands.
It's a Harith ship. It's Commander Shri Tan.
Zephyr is smiling, probably just as glad as Wil to know that the one friendly face they've encountered so far is still alive. On screen. A second later, through the static of the primary display, Wil sees the commander. She looks exactly like Wil feels. Her bridge is smoky and chaotic, and there's what looks like a med team tending to a fallen crew member in the background. "Commander Shritan," he says, "it's good to see you still with us."
You too, Captain Calder. Your ship is a testament to Ankaran shipbuilding and your expert piloting. The Peacekeepers are not giving up, I presume because you have the original source of that data packet on your ship.
That and 2 eyewitness peacekeepers who can testify to seeing documents related to this whole thing. Do you have a plan? Is your government getting involved? Will leans forward in his chair. We saw that there's a GNO reporter out here somewhere. She's seen the data, I assume.
The Harith government is getting involved, yes. I've been informed that our diplomats in Tarsus are causing quite a stir at the GC Assembly Building. Also, I've been instructed to ensure the safe arrival of your ship on Harith Prime.
She stops, looking over her shoulder. The audio must be muted on her end because she starts talking, but Will can't hear anything. She turns back to the screen.
The Peacekeepers seem intent on doing what they can to eliminate all evidence of this little Drenstorm they've caused. To answer your question, yes, the GNO reporter is aboard one of the Quillant cruisers. We hope that her continued updates will force the Peacekeepers to withdraw.
Will smiles. Hope you're not holding your breath, ma'am. The commander seems confused.
Why would I do that?
Never mind. It's just an expression on my planet, so what's the plan? We're out of the fight. Our weapons are all offline, our main reactor is only outputting at 50%. We're dead weight.
Is your space frame intact enough for a short trip at FTL?
The commander asks. Will looks over to Gabe, who nods.
Yes, Commander, the Ghost should survive a short trip at FTL.
She nods.
Then hold on to something.
The screen goes dark, and the ship lurches hard enough for the inertial compensators to flutter. Typically tied into the ship's systems and coordinated by the main computer, they haven't received the advanced warning they need to ramp up their efforts along with the ship's acceleration. Luckily for the crew of the Ghost, compensators work in fractions of ticks. And so, while unpleasant, the jump to FTL doesn't result in anyone on board becoming salsa on the back wall of the bridge.
Well, Xerxix and Megan, I have to say that what started as a story of the GC and Peacekeepers stepping in to protect GC members from unaffiliated systems and rebels within those systems has now turned into a story of corruption and greed among the upper ranks of the GC and Peacekeeper. Not only have we thoroughly reviewed the data packet released by Captain Wil Calder, but I've now heard through the grapevine of this hodgepodge fleet that aboard the Ghost are 2 ex-Peacekeeper officers who can testify to seeing several documents outlining this scheme to forcefully take over unaffiliated systems and join the GC under duress. Reports are that the original source of the incriminating recording is also located on board this ship.
Monel Farash pauses to collect herself.
I'm still aboard the Quillant cruiser that rescued the life pod I was in. The Quillant have formed a loose alliance with the Harith Navy, the Zangar, and surprisingly, the Harith rebels who previously bombed 2 Quillant freighters. I'm told that high-level discussions among the ship's commanders have cleared up a lot of the misunderstandings between the 2 Harith factions. I've also spoken to the captain of the ship, and he informs me that the rest of this small fleet has agreed to protect the Ghost. Getting it to Harith Prime, where presumably the ex-Peacekeepers from the Ghost, as well as what we are presuming is the bot that originally recorded the secret conversation, can be debriefed and interviewed.
The newscaster stops and nods as if listening to something, then continues.
Yes, at this time, at least out here, there's been no official word from the GC or this Peacekeeper task force. A Commander Janus, who's indicated he is in charge of the 4 new vessels that appeared, has only accepted 1 hail since his conversation with Captain Calder was rebroadcast.
Another pause, and then,
yes, things are quieter right now. A few moments ago, the Ghost, likely in a last-ditch effort to buy itself time, launched a very powerful missile at the pursuing Peacekeeper ships. But rather than target one ship directly, they detonated the missile between 2 ships, doing what I'm told is only moderate damage to both. That said, however, the damaged ships have slowed slightly, and the command ship has taken the lead in its chase. The Allied fleet has disengaged from harassing the Peacekeepers, directing their efforts to surround the heavily damaged Ghost, which I for one am happy about, As always, I'll keep you posted as things develop here. This is Monel Farash with GNO, live from the developing situation on the frontier.